This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. Carol Cambridge, the Stay Safe Project. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much, David. Pleased to be here.
You and I, even though we've been friends for 10 plus years, I actually never asked you, how did you get started in this crazy speaking business? I know that you've had a law enforcement career before that, and you can tell us kind of the backstory, but what was the pivot? What was that little moment of insanity that I think I want to speak and train and consult for a living?
Well, it's interesting. I was motivated out of a lack of anything else. So I moved from Canada to the United States. I didn't want to keep working shifts. I didn't want to start sort of at the bottom of the ladder. And I had always done training. And I just thought, I could see where there was a hole, if you will, in corporate America. I could see where they weren't addressing things. I think I was before my time because I saw issues and problems and I anticipated them long before they arrived. But I had attempted to get different jobs in the United States. Once I got my green card, I just was either overqualified or underqualified for just about anything. And I think that pivotal moment was when a recruiter said to me, the only thing you are qualified for is to go work for a large company and answer their switchboard. And I thought, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. And right after that, I started working just part-time, for those companies that have you fill in for a day or two here or there. And I worked with a gentleman, and the owner of this company came to me after day 3 and he said, Carol, I don't know why you're here. You could run this company. I could leave today and you could run the company. And so between those two things, I thought, you know what? I can do this. I haven't a clue how to do it. I knew nothing about business. I really didn't know anything about speaking. I did know how to train, but beyond that, nothing. And I just took off and said, well, if I have to earn a living for myself, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to have fun and I'm going to create a lifestyle around the work that I do.
And then coming from the experience and expertise and background, you could have taken this lots of places. You could have taken this to leadership. You could have taken this towards team building. You could have taken this towards, high performance under stress. You could have taken this to a resilience message. And you really are one of the top people in safe workplaces, workplace violence prevention. And this has been your niche for lots and lots of years. How did you first decide, out of all those different choices, I'm going down this workplace violence route. I want to own that mountaintop?
I think it developed over a period of a year or two because I was ready to offer just about anything to anybody who would buy me right off the beginning. But I realized that my passion was around keeping people safe at work, and there's really no reason that people couldn't be. I understood the fear, the panic. Most of us feel the safest both at home and at our workplace. And we just don't teach people how to deal with bullies. We don't teach people how to act and how to respond to active shooters, which is now sort of my claim to fame through experiential training. But at that time, I just realized that there was a real gap. People were afraid. Women were afraid leaving their companies late at night or being asked to stay and work overtime. They'd want to, but they were then afraid to leave after dark and go into dark parking lots, that kind of thing, head home, rural areas, all those fears. And so I started addressing that in particular.
It's so funny because I'm really hearing a demarcation point, right? Early days, it was about women traveling alone. It was about bullying. And I know we've always had these kind of, the post office shootings, right? People say, right. Go postal. And that's been, unfortunately, with us for 30 or 40 years. Would you say that the Columbine high school shooting is where this really came to the forefront? Like, oh my God, if this can happen in a high school, everyone has to take this a lot more seriously. Was that kind of a watershed moment?
It was a watershed moment, but not in corporate America. In education, it was. It switched how everybody thought about education. And the first time you have an active shooter situation like that, it's kind of gutsy because that person has nothing else to go by. It hasn't been done before. What happens after that is you get the copycats, you get the newscasters that make this big news and sensationalize it. And now we have others who want to continue that. But I don't think it's really hit corporate America until probably about the last 3 to 4 years. Even now, I have companies calling me every week who say, oh my gosh, we have no plan for high risk terminations. We're in fear of this guy that we terminated 3 months ago. Now what do we do? So suicide is up 30% across the nation. What's different about it now is that people who have been bullied, people who have been terrorized at work, they feel that their worthiness has been challenged. They haven't been treated fairly. They've been treated badly or wrongly. They're coming back into their workplace and they're killing themselves at work because they want everybody else to see how hurt they are, how hard done by they have been. And this is one of the changes that we're seeing. So corporations the last 3 to 4 years are really waking up. And I think Fortune 100 companies, they've had things in place for a long time. Fortune 50, Fortune 100s. It's the small to medium-sized businesses that are now recognizing, and that's really my niche, is working with those small to medium-sized businesses and putting teams of their people together, talking about cross-silo leadership as it affects safety, and really helping them to prevent, and then also get plans in place if something were to happen. But for me, what has shifted is 3 years ago, I created a new program, an experiential program. I've been studying adult learning for 20 years. And a lot of companies were asking me to do active shooter training. I didn't want to do it. I just didn't want to stand up there and tell people. And I thought if I could create this in an experiential way where every single person in the audience is involved, I think I can create a winner. And so much so that I get at least 3 to 6 referrals every single program that I do, including large conferences, because I've done conferences as large as 700. I'm doing one of 750 this fall. And when you clear a room of 700 people at a convention center, I mean, we have lots of logistics to make it happen, but we're doing it in a safe way that creates this visceral experience for people. And so people will say, oh my gosh, I've heard this before. Or one lady came to me, said, my husband is a police officer. I just called him. I told him about your training. He said this. And she says, I told him what you said. And he said, honey, I told you that 2 years ago. She'd tell him something else. Honey, I've been telling you that for several years. And she says, you know what? You maybe have, but today I got it. So that was sort of the huge pivotal piece for me in shifting things around.
Wow. I've got like a zillion questions right now, but I'm going to ask the most recent one. When you say experiential, are we talking about like role play? Are there actors involved? Do you use kind of scenario based things? I mean, obviously you get people moving, you get people evacuating 700 person ballrooms. How do you take that training and make it that experiential full immersion program?
It's interesting. A lot of it is through setting up logistics. So, for instance, I plant people in the audience with disabilities. And when the drill starts, they turn it around. They'll put sunglasses on. Their sign will say, I am blind. They're allowed to accept help, but they're not allowed to ask for help. And they actually attempt to get out of the room as a blind person would. We put somebody in an office chair and their sign says, I'm wheelchair bound. The idea is to see, will anybody stop and look? Will anybody think of anyone other than themselves in this drill? And quite honestly, I set the drill up. Now, they're not surprised. I have to put warnings in place, people with PTSD, people who have heart conditions, anything like that, we have to allow them to exit the room. And so as I'm giving instructions, I simply ask them to go ahead, leave the room, come back for the debrief. So we set the drill up and basically dim the lights as much as we can in safety. I have the sound of gunshots playing in the room. I'm creating chaos, yelling and screaming things into the microphone. Now, I have to be careful. There's a very fine line that I can't cross here because I do warn them. They know that it's coming. And I hand out some cards. So the people with cards open the cards and it will either say hide or fight. Everyone else is simply told, you have to leave the room. Now, the other thing I do is I ask anybody who's former law enforcement, former military to come on up front, and they're my observers. I will take anybody who maybe has a broken leg, any obvious injury. I have them come forward because I don't want them jostled or pushed to the ground. We do have a shooter. We have a shooter with a Nerf gun. We have automatic weapons, and we just create chaos, and they're told, get out of the room. I'm, of course, shouting instructions to confuse them and to create this chaos and panic. So most people are feeling this visceral response. They're panicked, but not to the point, where they're in fear for their lives, that kind of thing. And the Nerf bullets, if they get shot with them, they're told they have to drop to the floor. I use little ping pong balls that we'll throw at them as a secondary weapon. They come back in, we do a 45-minute debrief. So I talk to the people who have been shot. I ask people who were the first people out the doors, what did they see or they hear? Did they look for the shooter? And people do everything wrong. They go, oh my gosh, it never occurred to me. And I'll say, did I say the shooter was in the room? No. And so we work through everybody's fears, everybody's issues, the myths, the things that they've heard. So people are sitting, standing, they're all over the place. We interview the people who are at the front of the room as the observers. We have them share with people how this would have been different if it were real. And after about a 45-minute debrief, we do it a second time. And this is where the learning gets really exciting. The first drill, if I had, 700 people in the room, it'll take 4 to 5 minutes to clear the room the first time. The second time, between 1 and 2 minutes. And everybody does everything correctly. It's amazing. And when they could actually see the response, they will say, oh my gosh, my heart's pounding now. I can't imagine if this were real. Now I understand it. Now I get it.
Hey, good looking. Are you currently getting paid to speak? Would you like to ramp that up? We can help. Book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team at doitmarketing.com/call, and let's see what we might do together. The call is free, but the results may be priceless. There's so many lessons people can take away. I think one is certainly about adding an experiential component, a role play component, a simulation component, a get their heart racing in a real time sort of way. It doesn't have to be people shooting at your head. I mean, your topic is, hey, people shooting at your head. It could be a critical leadership situation, a critical innovation situation, a critical sales situation.
Absolutely. The one thing, David, I want to say that's critical for all of those things that you mentioned is the speaker or trainer has to create an atmosphere in which it's safe for people to make the mistakes. Yeah. Because I've had CEOs, CFOs, presidents of companies in this training. You can't make them look bad. And if you create that safe environment, everyone is okay with opening up and sharing their feelings. So that's one of the key things.
I want to mention just 2 quick things. This reminds me of our friend up in Canada, Bob Parker, who does this with race cars.
Yes.
Right? Completely different message, completely different topic, completely different style.
Absolutely.
But he's got the whole race car experience. Going out onto the track with the burning rubber and the gasoline and the split-second decisions and all the metaphors and analogies that he applies towards that. I'm curious because you've always been a master trainer. And like you said, 20 years adult learning, experiential, but in seats is what you used to do. And now you've added this third dimension. I'm guessing referrals have gone up, repeat business has gone up, spin-off business has gone up. How else has this made an impact on the way audiences receive you and then want to use you more?
It's interesting. The evaluations for mine are always skyrocketing because people are tired of just sitting and listening. And so for most of them, this is very different. Even if some of them have apprehensions coming in, they feel very differently. I'm starting to get referrals. I have a postcard that I give to everybody with the 7 tips for surviving an active shooter. And I'm now starting to get calls from this very inexpensive but well done marketing piece. And I asked somebody recently, they want me to come in and do, I think, 5 presentations. And I said, how did you hear about me? I'm not sure if our CEO saw you, but somebody gave this card to our CEO, who gave it to the VP of HR, who gave it to me to make it happen. I said, are you looking at other people? No, you're the best. I'm getting more of that, less comparisons, because there are other people that do what I do, but they don't do it in quite the same way, and they don't create quite that safe environment. So I'm really starting to own this space in particular, which is even further niched than the other work that I'm doing.
That's what I was going to say is that, in preparation, because, I've seen all kinds of iterations of your website, and as your business was growing and multiplying and expanding, I think your business is bigger than it's ever been and more successful than it's ever been.
Yes.
And the website is so concise. You are literally living the message about less is more. When you had to trim down the website, because there was a lot of pages, there was a lot of language, there was a lot of programs.
Yes.
And now it is super tight. I mean, people should go, and we'll give them some resources and some ways to stay in touch with you, but it's the staysafeproject.com. As a buyer, it totally passes the 2-second rule. I know what it is. I get it. It says active shooter training, workplace violence training, motivational keynote. It's like option A, B, or C, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, beautiful design, nice big pictures, social proof out the wazoo. You lost everything else. Because we all love our stuff, right? As speakers, like we all love our stuff. We love our language. We love our programs. How are you brave enough and smart enough to let 80% of that go?
It was really tough, and it took me a long time. I took probably 18 months to handle that transition. I'd love to say I was better at it. I was married to much of the language, and you know this, David. Our listeners don't know this, but David helped me write most of my former website. And every time I would look at it, I'd go, I can't do better than that. David is the best at copywriting. How do I do better? And I just had to keep, changing this. Part of it was I needed to protect the other IP, and I couldn't use any of that language on this new creation. And I wanted to also put a positive spin on it. I didn't want negative words and negative thoughts. Fear is a really powerful and a complex emotion, and people will buy from fear, but they have to see that I'm going to create that safe outcome. Because, fear is complex, but it can be either paralyzing. For speakers, we're paralyzed by rejection. We're fear of the outcome. We don't want to pick up the phone and call somebody because they might not like us. They might not want us, but we imagine those fears. For others, those fears are very motivating. So for those people in extreme sports, that jump out of airplanes, any of that fear is a motivator. So how do I take both of these ideas and get them onto this website? I will tell you, the website probably took 9 months. And even when I went into it, I thought I had it figured out. I thought I had the language. What I did have figured out was the feeling that I wanted. The emotion, but then it was write, rewrite. And then I would see it up on the website and I go, oh no, that's not it. I got to start fresh. And so it was very agonizing, I will say.
It's funny because I think anyone that is in the, let's say, fraud prevention, cybersecurity, certainly workplace violence, active shooter, in a way, when you go negative like that, you're selling insurance. Yes. And we know how hard it is to sell insurance. What you've done with this new spin is the Stay Safe Project. You've done 2 things. You're selling improvement, right? And you're selling a movement. You're selling a movement around my mission is that when you walk into your job and your place of work, anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, you feel just as safe as walking in your front door at home.
Yes. Can I borrow that language?
Yes. Thank God it's been recorded. It's yours. It's my gift to you. Because you look at every other workplace violence expert. I know that you're always a master of the competition. You're always a student of the game. And they're always old white guys, and they're always ex-cops or FBI. And it's like, it's the same story over and over and over and over. You've turned it 180 degrees around. where it's positive. It's no longer scare tactics, or we're no longer selling insurance. We're selling a new future, a different future. And I also love the fact that you, quote unquote, that you own it, because it says the Stay Safe Project with Carol Cambridge. So it's almost like a TV show. This could be a TV show. This could be a podcast. This could be a conference. This could be a column in all the big trade publication magazines. How were you able to take yourself? You didn't take yourself out of the picture, which is brilliant, but you made this way bigger than yourself. How was that journey?
Good. It made it feel more comfortable. A lot of people said to me, no, you've got to go with carolcambridge.com. They're buying you. You're the one they want. That's you. And whatever reason, it didn't feel comfortable to me. It didn't feel big enough. I felt that it's okay, but I wanted to sell the outcome. I really wanted to focus on the outcome, and I wanted to be able to shift people's mindsets, to have them question their beliefs. And so we played around with a lot of things, but I was convinced it had to be dual branding. It needed to be Carol Cambridge and then it was those outcome words. And really, I just sat and brainstormed, came up with a couple of 100 names, and we started doing searches. What has been taken? What's already used? What's been claimed? And no matter what happened, I kept coming back to it has to be the Stay Safe Project. And people would say, well, you can't start this until you have the rest of the project. And I said, yes, I can. I'm tired of the stories and the excuses that we as speakers put in front of ourselves. All of these stumbling blocks. I can start this without having the project. We're just getting ready. We're in pre-launch right at the moment with our Surviving an Active Shooter video series. As you know, David, I've never done a book. And the reason I've not done a book, I've gone against that philosophy in the speaking industry, is because the stuff I do is cutting edge. By the time I finish the book and it's published, it's already old. But with video, I can change that. I can shift that. And so we're now already selling the video series that isn't even finished yet as a part of. So when you hire me to come in and train your company, guess what? You get this built in. I put my price up, and that includes the video series. It's a huge value added. They love it. I get more money. They're thrilled because they can train their people who weren't there that day. They're off location people that are in other states or couldn't be there. So it's kind of a win-win. And as you said, as soon as this is finished, then I'm on my next project. And even the way we're phrasing the emails now when they're signing up is thank you for bringing the Stay Safe Project to your corporation, to your company. And so people feel like it's part of that bigger thing. I knew I had a vision for something bigger. I don't even have all of the vision right now, David. I just know that it allows me to continue.
So many gems. I think people need to rewind, listen to the last 3.5 minutes of what Carol just said, gem after gem after gem. You and I, we've both tried all kinds of crazy stuff. When you mentioned the video series, at one point you had that 52 series videos. Was there something that was salvageable from that or recyclable? Or was that just, hey, we tried it, it didn't work out?
Tried it, didn't work out. Part of the reason it didn't work out was because we were attempting to sell it through a platform that included the selling of the entire platform to the client. Well, most clients already have their own platform. They just want the videos. It's really easy. They sell them to me. We send them out on OneDrive. They get the videos. They put them in their own system. I don't have to worry about the technology. I don't have to stop and explain the technology. You and I both know I'm not very good at that technology. And so I wanted it to fit the KISS system. Keep it simple, sexy. Right. It just had to be good and easy. And people are loving that. So if I am in an association, I'm selling it for a lesser price when I'm in front of the group, if they allow that to occur.
The new videos, is that a one-time thing or is that a licensing or renewable or how does that work?
At this point, it is simply 12. We have geared towards the health and safety arena. That's where I do most of my speaking, not all, but most. And all of these companies and all these associations who send their people, they all do safety meetings every single month. They have a 30-minute safety meeting and they go over slip and falls and they go over some really valuable stuff within the safety realm. But they really haven't hit workplace violence or active shooter, but that's part of the conversation. And so these are short clips, 2 to 4 minutes. There's a facilitator's guide that goes with it. So it could be the health and safety person, it could be the HR person. So I created them specifically for those meetings. But the early feedback we're getting from people is, oh no, we're using these for all of our remote workers. Oh, we're going to use these on our safety day. And so now I'm actually soliciting feedback from people who have them to understand better all the ways they're using them. And then I'll use their words to market them, because a brilliant man by the name of David Newman taught me how to do that.
If the client says it, it's the right language, right?
Exactly.
Now, I'm also noticing, I'm not sure how much has kicked in, but because you've been doing all your great work for such a long period of time, you've got some search engine optimization juice happening. I mean, it's very subtle. It's really well done. But of course, when you look for it, you're like, oh, workplace violence training. Oh, active shooter training. How much are you being found now that you've built this flywheel of momentum? It's never enough, but has it started to happen where there's some nice inbound traction coming?
Yes. We're probably in around 10 to 15%. It's not huge yet. We're still working on it. So what happened when I rebranded, I literally had to let go of all of that SEO traction. So 15 years and I had great traction, went literally out the window and I had to start from scratch. We've done a great job focusing on LinkedIn. I really don't use the other social media very much. I own them. I've claimed my spot with them. But I literally have people reaching out now via LinkedIn and they'll say, we saw your profile, went to your YouTube page, and they've just hired me. They said, we looked at your website quickly. Why look anywhere else? So we are starting to get the traction. My problem is, along with many other speakers, is the consistency. I haven't been updating the blog, and we're going to work on that this summer. I have a little bit of time where I'm not out on the road quite as much as I have been. And so I'm literally going to put a lot of that together and hand that off to somebody else so that they're doing it. And quite honestly, I'm going to go back to a blog once a month. I just can't do it more than that. Anything more than that is too much pressure. But yes, we are starting to get it with the proper hashtags and all of that kind of thing. SEO is coming our way.
Now, another thing that you've broken the mold by being very, very successful without a book yet, I'm not seeing the traditional kind of speaker, sizzle reel, demo reel video. Ton of content videos on YouTube, teaching videos, trust building videos. Talk about the quote unquote, oh, you have to have a video demo that has to look like X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I've been doing this business for 26 years now. And when we got this website up and operational about 18 months ago, we did do a video. We did put one up there. It's not the traditional video, but that was the first time I had ever used one. Yeah. I think if you're going to be in front of bureaus, if bureaus are looking for you, then you really need to have that. I get a little bit of bureau business, not a lot. And I've not focused on that. I am getting more and more keynotes all the time because of these referrals. Somebody sees me and they want me for their convention. So, I didn't spend a lot of money. There's a new one coming, a new one in the works that's specifically going to be towards the active shooter, that's going to have little clips. I think choosing to do it differently for me has worked. Might not work for everybody, but I didn't want to look the same. As a matter of fact, the hairs on the back of my head go up every time I hear, well, as a speaker, you need to do this, or as a trainer, you need to do this. And I'm like, no. How can I show up differently? How can I speak differently? How can I look differently? What can I do differently? So every time I hear somebody say you have to have it this way, for me, that's a huge motivator to look for an alternative method.
Super quick commercial break. Isn't this interview amazing? If you'd like to get more ideas on how to start or grow your speaking business fast, pop over to our free training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. Well, it's funny. When we first started talking, I just jotted down all the different hats that I feel you wear. And so here they are in no particular order, because you really bring this really unique combination of things to your work. I wrote down part cop, part lawyer, part VP of HR, part therapist, part counselor, part teacher, and part mentor. And good luck making a video about that, right? So I put typically speakers and experts into three categories. You're a performer, which is fine.
Right.
And performers almost always need video. You're a teacher, and I consider myself primarily a teacher it's very content heavy, it's very how-to heavy. Then there's a catalyst. And I would put you probably 70% teacher, 30% catalyst, is that you make things happen. You show them, you change behavior. When you leave the building, they are doing things differently. Some competencies and capabilities have been transferred from when you walked in to when you walk out. If you're a performer, you know what? Have the sizzle reel, have the fancy website with the flying fireworks and everything.
Exactly.
The teachers and the catalysts, it's a different value prop. So it's a different set of marketing tools. It's even a different sales conversation, isn't it?
It totally is. And it's interesting because we have just agreed in the last couple of weeks that we are going to have two different sets of marketing to send out. One is for conventions, the meeting planners, the conventions, the conferences, and the other is going to be for corporations. Much of it is very similar, but we literally went through with highlighters and tweaked. This applies for conferences, this applies for corporations. And so it's not that much work to separate it out. But I share this because even though I've been in the business for this long, even though I'm doing this work, it took me until 3 weeks ago to say, we need to make this a little easier, because when we're working with corporations, the question is always, what's the outcome? What's the behavioral changes that you want to see? That's always the question. Not necessarily the question for a conference or a convention, because their answer is going to be awareness. That's always going to be what their answer is.
Yeah.
So very valuable point, David.
Well, I have two final questions here as we're entering the home stretch. The final question is, how do people get connected and stay connected to you? And should their clients ever ask for a referral? Hey, someone that does a good workplace violence program or active shooter training, or we need that. This should be your first, best, and only stop, is to talk to Carol. But the question before, how do people get connected to you? Looking at everything we've talked about today, what would be one central point that you hope people really come away with to help them in their own speaking business?
I think it's about fear. Fear is that essential role in survival. But in the English language, we use fear in a couple of different ways. And so fear really drives us to negative outcomes, negative emotions, negative feelings. And so what I would say to people is, when they have that fear, so they get all upset about, I've got to make that phone call, or I'm not sure I'm worth putting my price up. Whatever that is, they need to acknowledge it, confront it. So we imagine the worst. Reframe it. Imagine the best. Imagine if that buyer says yes. Imagine if you get that money that you want. Imagine that you take that actionable step. There was something our dear friend Mark LeBlanc has said many years ago, and it always sticks with me. Done is better than perfect. I don't know that my marketing materials are ever done. I mean, they're done because I move forward with them. Right. Are they ever perfect? Never. So just not to let that fear stop you from taking that next step. If everybody else is doing it, it might work for them, but it doesn't necessarily have to work for you. So I think it's constantly looking internally. What do I need to do? What makes me special? What makes me different? And that's hard for most of us to be able to put into writing. And David, I have to give you kudos. I am going to have to replay this because you pick out all the little gems. I say them, but I don't even acknowledge them. I don't get them. And that's why I'm always sending people to you, David Newman. You catch those and then we can turn around and use those. But we have to get out of our own way. That's the number one issue. We can't let fear stop us. We have to get out of our own way. And really, I teach all the way around. I teach people to come from a place of strength, not from a place of fear. And it doesn't matter which program I'm speaking about or if I'm talking to speakers, because if it's a fear-based decision, it's emotional and it's not necessarily logical. If it's a decision made from strength, it's going to save your life. It's going to save your marketing. It's going to save your speech. It's going to save everything because the best of you is coming forward.
Yeah, could save your marriage, could save your health, could save your kids, could save your dog.
Exactly. And it's interesting. I had a gentleman not too long ago. I was doing a program in Seattle and it was active shooter. He came to me afterwards and he said, Carol, I need to share with you that he said, my wife was shot in Las Vegas in the shooting. I had a little bit of a conversation. There was other people around. We exchanged cards. And the next day he sent me an email and he said, I've seen you speak 2 or 3 times. And he said, I've always liked the way you've presented your message. And I always go home and I share it with my wife and my kids. And I do believe that my wife survived the shooting in Las Vegas in part because of the things that you've shared. Now, not all of it. And she was shot, long recovery, a lot of psychological, issues to deal with. But that's what gets me going. That's what gets my juices going. That's what gets me wanting to be out there and do things differently.
Hashtag getting goosebumps. Really, truly, what a fantastic story. I mean, a lot of us are out there, oh yeah, we're changing lives. But Carol, you're out there saving lives.
Oh, that's a good one too, isn't it?
Take them all. Take them all. It's free for all time here, my friend. It's free for all time. While you're jotting that down, some programs change lives. Our program saves lives.
There you go.
Boom.
Absolutely.
So if people want to connect with you, see what's happening in the empire, watch the project as it unfolds and gets bigger and better and stronger month after month and year after year, where do they go to get more Carol?
To the staysafeproject.com. Or if you're in Canada,
there, the blog, the whole thing, the video, everything.
Everything. You will find ways to connect with us, and you can always find us on LinkedIn as well. We have a good following on LinkedIn, and we often post more actually on LinkedIn than sometimes we do on the website.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, you said about LinkedIn has really been your go-to. Very, very quickly. Do you do status updates, repost long-form articles? Do you connect with prospective buyers? What is that LinkedIn routine that you've adopted?
All of the above. All of the above. We do videos, again, 2-minute videos. I attempt to do videos every time I'm out at a speaking engagement. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm looking at it like video storytelling. People love authenticity and they love stories. And so I will see something happen, I hear something, and I want to share that with people. We're getting lots and lots of views. Sometimes I'll pull something up. So after the last active shooter incident, we reposted a video on the difference between cover and conceal because most people don't understand that distinction. I think the first time around we had some 12 or 1400 views of that. The second time around, I think we were around 400 or 500. So it's constantly looking for new things. Sometimes it's posting news articles or something that's popped in the news that we want people to be aware of. Again, probably not doing as much of that as I should be, but generally a couple of posts a week, and people are definitely finding us there. They're searching.
You're doubling down, you're fishing where the fish are.
Exactly. And that's where the movers and the shakers and the decisions makers are. So they're going there first. And I would say we've had half a dozen that have found us originally through LinkedIn. Then they've gone to the website and or YouTube and then hire.
That's called a hand on the door tip. It's like Columbo. He's got the hand on the door, turns around. Oh, ma'am, I forgot to ask you about LinkedIn. You said that you're doing LinkedIn. What's up with the LinkedIn? So apologies for the hand on the door, but I just couldn't have you go without sharing that final nugget.
And here's a little additional. I'm going to give props to Jennifer Darling out of Sacramento, California, because we hired her about a year ago and just said, fix it. Just I'll give you anything and everything you want. Just update it, fix it. I didn't have time. We just kind of handed it over. She held our hand through the process. An amazing person who understands the marketing, the sales piece, the corporate piece, and LinkedIn.
So she helped you optimize your profile, put the right things in the right places, do some little SEO on LinkedIn, what people might be searching for when they're looking for someone like you. She put all of that in place with you and helped you.
Absolutely. And then taught us how to do it, how to keep it up. So
I love it.
Big shout out to her.
She will officially be shouted out too.
All right.
We'll link her up in the show notes. We'll put her in the show notes. when they look up this episode at thespeakingshow.com, not only will all of Carol's goodies be there, and Carol on LinkedIn and Carol on Twitter, but we'll give Jennifer a little link out in case you guys want some help in that department as well.
Awesome. Thank you, David.
Thank you for being on. We're going to have you back for another coffee chat.
Anytime. Love to be there.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.